Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where ROSE MINAHAN and her guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken heart and soul consciousness. Come journey with us exploring the meaningfulness of astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello everybody, I'm Sue Minahan, and today I am going to be presenting a talk again to you from me. And the subject is that time between the light. You know, we have a eclipse season that lasts for 2 weeks, at least before, 2 weeks after, and really time on a timeless basis is pretty hard to determine. But yet we can somehow agree on that. But the time in between, we're going to talk about that because events, it's important. Okay, let's begin.
Talk Cosmos engages unique events during the 3rd and 4th weeks of the month, featuring a myriad of new and returning guests. Joining host and founder ROSE MINAHAN, they co-create to explore and contemplate a wide spectrum of potent subjects. Embark on today's topic within our panorama of guests and insights as we welcome the astrologers for this conversation.
Hello, everybody. Yes, let's indeed talk about it. Now, it hasn't quite happened. You know, the first eclipse is going to be on the 12th. Today's the 9th. That's only 3 days away. It is so close. And when we talk about eclipses, it's a stop, look, listen. Do you remember as a kid in school? I really didn't like those books at all. Look at Spot Run or some ridiculous thing. Thankfully, I got out of that because I was so bored. But here, it is important to just notice, pay attention. I have a friend that keeps saying that, and there's a lot of wisdom to it, noticing. But sometimes you think pay attention as someone's telling you an order. No, the universe in this sense has so many messages, and it's an intuitive, innate thing too. Because life is that, really. It's not just a manual that we had at birth, but the stars, that's our guideline. This happens to be the 2 eclipses, the solar eclipse there that you see with the ring around it. And it is going to be a total one. That's going to be on the 12th up there in Iceland and Greenland. It'll actually be a crescent. Amanda and I did that, I think it was last week, as a crescent hanging on the horizon. If you can see the western horizon, that would be in many parts of Europe and northern Africa. Here in Hawaii, we won't see it. The northern part of US will. But the lunar eclipse, which is more than 2 weeks later, it's actually going to be 2 weeks and 2 days later, which I haven't figured out why. That was brought to my attention in a class with Linda Barry. It will be on the 28th, and it will be in Pisces. So this time in between also has some messages. We know that life is vibrational. This is a great picture of it. I think it shows the colors, the dynamics. There's so much that we can't see, which I think for many of us is always a constant reminder, because the endless possibilities of what we're told through advertising or through science or through schools or just our hearts and our minds, yet still we have limitations as far as what we touch, see in our senses, yet it exists. And really, the vibrational existence, you can see it here on the desert. This is a picture of the sand as the wind goes along, and there it is, etched out. You know, it's the waves. It's like the currents, because light actually is a particle and a wave. When you notice it, it stops, just like a photograph. You know, many cultures didn't want their photographs taken because it stole their energy, it felt. Because really, whenever you look at a picture, sometimes you go like, yeah, it was pretty much how I was feeling, but not really. It was like that in-between moment, maybe. But we're able to still stop and look at it and observe it, and then it comes back. But every single thing, the atoms, the distance, the motion. You know, it's a topic that I and several people, Rick Levine often always talks about. And I've always been very focused on this idea of energy that never changes. I mean, it always changes, but it never changes. It's like the river. You know, in Mexico, there's an adage, life is like a river because it's constantly changing, but always the same. Because energy, we know, doesn't get destroyed. It just reforms. It's marvelous, like yeast. So back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, this was known. There was that song Good Vibrations, and it kind of augmented it. It actually started back in the 20s with the vibes there in jazz, because the vibraphones, they were using vibraphones, which is a wonderful instrument with kind of like a xylophone, actually. You know, you hit these rods of metal and they make different tones. He was a great jazz musician. He's no longer alive, but didn't die that long ago. That made it quite famous. Point being, in the 60s and 70s, it became to be how you were feeling, good or bad. Bad vibes, good vibes. Oh, those are the vibes. And it was really with that intonation, whether it was how it was understood. Or it could be a place, like, you don't want to go there, it's bad vibes. Or, yeah, go there, they're great vibes. You know, or, oh, that person has great vibes. You know, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a stepping stone of something that becomes common, that really gets into mainstream. I think more and more we know that in so many ways. In fact, people, pets know this. You know, like a dog. We had a dog, or the kids. I helped raise some young children, which is a good experience for us all in the long run. And there was a dog named Angel. And I noticed that Angel knew when we were coming. Its little tag, her tail was wagging. I was getting tag and wag in there, tail and wag, just wagging like crazy and just wiggling, ready to see us. It's, you know, that with animals, they sense. Or for instance, with those buffalo, you know, where someone stopped to take a photograph, they directed their attention to that animal and the animal sensed it. You know, it's not like just we get so used to a calendar life, or even Zoom here, or StreamYard, which I'm on, but however it is electronic, where it's two-dimensional. You imagine the three-dimensional, but we're not there. That kind of got my brain going, didn't it? But the point is that animals know that there's vibrations, and it is part, like those buffalo, because then they're protective. They're like, you're walking into their space. There is such a thing as an aura space that you're supposed to hold. This part of us. We taught that more. A lot of people know that. Healing touch knows this, and nurses have literally taught healing touch for years and years, which shocked me. I thought, well, if that's the fact, why don't they teach that in school more? Just let you know that there's more beyond than just what you touch, feel, and the senses. Healing touch is on our subtle energy systems. And that's a great phrase right there. You know, there's in Findhorn, Scotland, back in the 60s and 70s, there was a group of people that went to this very arid, windy location and worked with the subtle energies, as they called it, and created this absolutely astounding garden. It is now a heritage site. Many talks are there. David Spangler is one of them. Freya is another. They're in, I think, Issaquah now, Washington. So it's not invasive, and it's a therapy that your vital energy, it has a flow to it. And these hand movements actually help direct your energies, or clear out some of the debris that, if you're empathic, you might pick up of other people. So vibrations. And the reason I'm bringing this is because we're in this eclipse season. And eclipses are vibrations. That's why it's 2 weeks ahead and why the weeks between. Like, we don't just sit there going, we do, but we're going to get to that. So what's really holding between this entire seasonal eclipse season with the lunar nodes. They just changed on the 26th of July. They have an 18-month cycle, and they entered Aquarius and Leo, but they're staying at that 29 degrees because of the eclipses. The sun, it coincides when the sun or the moon are within a certain degrees of the lunar nodes, and that's that path around the sun's path and the moon's path. The alignment is such that Earth either blocks the light or else the moon blocks the light, meaning that we get these eclipses. And we get a pair of them twice a year. It's a routine experience, but always new because it's an interruption. The light flow, the vibrational energy. And for those of you that have experienced it, it is a subtle quietness, a stillness that's ethereal. It's almost like being out in space. And when it bursts with life, with that first ray of light, people erupt with joyous sounds. Animals come back, the insects, the buzzing. It's pretty spectacular. It's like being at a theater when the lights go out and then they might click and they go on. So it's holding for almost 11 weeks, 2 days shy. That is almost 3 months. That's well over 2.5 months. That's a long period of time for this point. And points are important. I will go into the idea of midpoints. If you do Iranian astrology, do vibrational astrology, they both work with midpoints. Again, going back to Rick Levine, he's doing, which many of you are familiar with, he's doing just did a series on Astro Hub about midpoints and talks about it a great deal. In my vibrational astrology, midpoints are huge. And Uranian, which has been around a long time. A lot of financial astrology is derived from Uranian, which surprised me when I found out. Not for those of you that are geared that way. Point being, the nodes are hanging at that point. And that is what is carrying through, among other things, with this period of time that we're experiencing. So it started with the Leo, which will be on the 12th, yet to be. And with this particular Leo, we are really working to embody our leadership. And it is a matter of, they're both hanging at the South Node, amazingly, because it's in Leo and Leo's in the South Node and the sun's there, which is the embodiment of all of us. So it's really a matter of seeing what's hanging us up, not really allowing us to have that manifestation of leadership that all Leo is by birthright wants to provide. But there are ways that sabotage it. And that's what's important. And that's what this midpoint of this cycle that I'm going to be talking about, that's on the 22nd of August, is going to be addressing. Because Leo is the sun that radiates the generosity, but you need to give that to everybody, which means that you might think that you're on second totem pole, but if you were to switch that, either person could feel that way. So maybe it's much better to just allow leadership to exist and work at it in a way that connects the dots. Well, then we go into the Pisces lunar node that we're also talking about this period of time that we'll be addressing on the end of the month at the 28th. That'll be at 4 degrees Pisces. Amanda and I are going to do that on the 23rd, so you can catch that more in detail. But the beautiful thing about Pisces is it can hold two truths simultaneously. It is the last sign of the zodiac. It embodies unity and wholeness, the whole womb. And it's able to do that. It's just like these masks. One is comedy, one is tragedy, one is sorrow, one is joy or gratitude. One is grief. You know, there's so many circumstances in this world that on a large scale and close to us that require, because of changes, because we are in this transpersonal world of, which I will mention later too, and others have, that are constantly adjusting our directions away from what we've been accustomed to. And for instance, here in Hawaii, where I live on the Big Island, over in Maui, another island right close before you get to Oahu, 3 years ago, as of the 8th, yesterday on the 8th of August, was that tremendous, devastating fire. Now, since then, Los Angeles has had a devastating fire. And as we speak, fire is rampant over the United States. When you watch these news, your heart just begs for people. That it's just devastating to experience such tremendous loss. But despite that, like in Los Angeles, the areas have been, the canyon is rebuilding through growth, and in Lahaina, it's slow, but the rebuilding has a process. Now, there's many people with FEMA, it was just on the news, sharing that, like this one man, he's a musician, a Hawaiian person, a native Hawaiian, and lived there all his life among many other people, but just as an example. And FEMA he's had to move 7 times. They come knocking on the door. You got to get out today. So it's been a struggle, but yet on the other hand, there is this promise of this home that's being built that the state is really working industriously to create. And so there is this sorrow with the joy, just as an example. And I'm sure in your own communities, in your own life, you can feel that. So that's a hopeful thing. It's something to remember. It doesn't have to be black and white. It can be on this stage of life that Leo wants. And how do you present it? Because you don't want a solo stage. You need an audience and you need that give and take. And you can hold both. Well, looking at this a little bit more, Sabians are increasingly focused upon, and it's for the Sabian, according to it rounds off to the next. Now, if you're doing not Chanley, but Chandra one, they stay the same, which is John Sandsberg. But for Jung, Rudar, Edmund Jones, they all round off to the next. So it's 30 degrees. So it's 30 degrees in every sign. This one is an unsealed letter. It's quite mystic in its own way. It's saying that, yes, we're connected, that everything is evident, whether it has been revealed or not, meaning that it's unsealed, the letter's there, just when is it going to be opened? And more than that, it will be opened. And all the art forms that we create, all the letters, all the stages, it shares to some degree that message, that spiritual energy that we have. And I mention this because it's really important to realize that as the nodes are hanging there, since this entire month of August, starting at the last week of July, and all of September, and into October, this is going to be the Sabian symbol. Meaning if you have ways that you want to manifest, which we all do, a small or large, grandiose or whether it's fantasy or not, and we'll see that everything starts with imagination, whether it stays in the imaginal world, which can become illusion depending on how we find the steps to manifest it, but there's help there to do that. And also there is, with the nodes, Aquarius, North Node, which is community. You can try to find, you can work to find a community. You just listening is a community. I wish we were more of a community, but that might be. Wishes happen. So with that, nothing can remain permanently sealed. And it is that communication and that sharing that's so important, that one realizes it. And that's the glory of any renaissance, which again we'll get into. We have this ongoing energetic cycle phase is an aspect of a trine. That's part of this on the 22nd that's happening, is this Grand Trine, that ideas, with Pluto and Uranus, because they're in air signs, Gemini and Aquarius. They want to go. There's nothing holding air. Maybe it gets to be a cloud, maybe it gets some water, but it's still communicating something. Okay, on the 22nd, which is, I didn't count it, but if you go from the 12th to the 28th, it's closer to the lunar eclipse in Pisces. But at this point, the reason it's so powerful is the South Node and the Sun are absolutely conjunct in this Grand Trine. And because the nodes are hanging at 29 degrees, when the Sun conjuncts, it illuminates, it gives that light, it shines down. And it also is going to be a point that's going to carry, because points carry long time. That's why if you have a Venus, and I know I'm associating different things here, but they're important. The Venus star points, when the Sun and Venus get together, 5 pentagram, those are points that remain in your chart. Your chart's points remain and connect with transits. So this 29 degrees Leo is of eminent importance. It's the very pinnacle, the anoretics degree, you could say, where you have built everything, developed into this manifestation. It's just aching and yearning to go into Virgo and be complete and do the next phase, but it's not. It's still in Leo. So it's rising to the highest elevation. Now, in this particular charts that I've shown, this is in Hawaii. So in other charts will be at 0 points with not a rising sign. But here, it's actually culminating in the 10th house. Not quite to the MC, but it's strong. And look at that stellium in Leo. There's the point, and I put both of them here because it's staying there for 22 minutes. Now you might think that's not long, but it's more than just, it is still holding. It has a pinnacle, and it is this in-between stage. And a Grand Trine in vibrational astrology, according to David Cochran, who is now, he's going by another name. Sorry about that. It just flipped out of my mind, but maybe it'll come. But the point is, with his research, trines are not passive. It is like being on a treadmill that you insist on maintaining, and people will do what they must do to keep it. Now, yourself and others will do that because the flow is good. In this particular trine, there's a lot more involved because it happens to be too where there's a midpoint, which is the North Node, which means all the potential of taking all that energy that we're shedding, the shadow part. And shadows are, again, they give distinctions to visibility. If you take artwork, if you're going to paint anything, you need to see the shadow as well as the highlights. That's what gives it distinction and three-dimensional qualities. Then you can start piecing it together. And shadows are not to stay in, they're to walk through. That's what Ananda did when she dropped to through the gates. When she does, when Venus does her 40-day cycle, when 40 days she's not visible in the underworld, and then she comes up as a morning star or after a evening star, that whole relationship. And you shed the things that you don't need, and then you put them back on. And that's really what eclipses do anyway. The light goes out just like a break, which we're going to take in just a minute, and you'll get your chance to regroup. And stay tuned, because I am going to follow through looking at these charts more clearly and bringing in some tools that what those are really trying to tell us. That stop, look, listen idea of eclipses, where we pay attention. And this is one of those points. Okay, we'll be right back. Thanks.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the Yang period of Leo, ruled by the solar sun. Having departed from a cycle based on the internal process of emotional attachments requiring security and safety, the energy of Leo externally manifests our legacy through children and artistic creations. As a fixed Yang fire sign that desires to ignite actualization, Leo the lion takes the risk to generously exhibit love and welcome all to share their stage with joyous pleasure for living life.
Talk Cosmos ignites conversations to awaken heart and soul consciousness every Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Listen on KKNW, stream the video on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page, or catch the podcast on major podcast carriers. While you're there, remember to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Plus, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com to join our expedition and launch your week into the cosmic wonder.
Ready to shake things up? Try Alternative Talk 1150.
Very good. We're back. Yes, this is the Grand Trine. And you can see, now this here is without any ascendant. It's just the zodiac starting at 0 degrees. And the names, of course, are Grand Trine. And if you have a midpoint between one of the angles, or one of the trines, then it's a kite, because the energy leads there and it's that opposition. So what is that opposition? That opposition, which is really the idea of this, is that the sun is finally saying, hey, whatever you are, there's a promise for you. And I'm going to remind you in different ways, in different little stories, as the month goes on through August and through September into October, how you can manifest, really letting go of some of those things that are hanging you up, whether it's needing too much validation because you don't have enough self-worth. But then there's help there, because look, Chiron is right there. Chiron in Taurus, and that's all about self-worth. It's really a matter of learning, by the nature of you being alive, by the nature of everybody's life, they have the right, the beauty, the dignity of exhibiting whatever it is. We have the choice of saying, no, we're not interested, and that's fine. We have the choice of letting them be and doing what we choose, or gaining with other people to help and manifest. There is so many ways. Also, if you look at Venus, that's really ruling that Chiron, she, thinking of it as she here, just for that factor in the mythology of Western astrology, and we all have the she's and he's in us, it's all one, but for vernacular reasons, is directly working with Saturn. So it's really wanting to get those relationships that we have figured out, how we can make those steps that are going to lead us what's fundamentally important for what our goals are. It's not frivolous. It's really something that is saying, okay, that's not part of the picture here. You know, we only have so much time. You need to focus. You need to get involved with what your point, what your call to action is, what your importance is. Behind all of this, again, is this minor Grand Trine for 5 years, 2025 to 2030, and I'll talk about it more. But it is where the air that doesn't have any boundaries is going, ideas, where do I connect them to? And how can I get these visions and morph it? And that's the best case scenario rather than denying or escaping. You know, a little bit of R&R is good, of course. Well, let's look at Leo. So we have the Leo part, this stellium right there. It has Mercury and Jupiter that's going to be all year in Leo, which is our belief systems. So are our belief systems so powerful that we can't take somebody else's and we can step aside maybe just enough to allow them their pain? There is pain in this world. It's one thing about Aquarius, which has to do with that trine. For evolutionaries, it's where the things get moved so fast that there's things don't flow in a process that we can, that's according to our timing. It's too abrupt. We have emotions. You know, we're people, we're mortal. But the good news about Mercury is it keeps bringing in more information. And if you listen to other people's leadership, you might get an idea. It might rub you the wrong way at first, but if we listen, stop, look, and listen, if we care enough and we love enough, and love is where you really give that person that dignity of their existence for how they see it, and allow them to be who they are, live and let live. So there's hope here for Leo to shake that mane. Now, Chiron, the wounded healer, the alchemist that sees the truth of any moment of what needs to be, is in the sensual senses of our resources, of our survival, of our self-worth, and ruled by Venus. That is also about balance. You know, she rules 2 signs, and she's always looking at what is the spiritual in some ways and what is the material, and finding what's truly the desire that's going to fulfill. It's linked to love too. All of this really flows well with Leo if we look upon it as ways that we can, because by sign they're square, but by degrees they connect. So it might be a little bit like a spicy ingredient in your life, but it's not hard to take. It kind of blends in if you just really accept it and are willing. And the moon, well, there you go, another polarity, because it's ruled by Saturn. And so often we'd go, well, that's limitations. But what's it limiting? Maybe it's important. Maybe it's saying, let's get down to traditional things. Let's get down to what's, if you're going to look at your troubles, you know, what's in the past, your childhood, maybe there were things that you had to agree to that didn't work, that you are going to use other energies to liberate from, or see the other polarity to, or maybe it stabilizes and brings it, because interestingly, it is an exact trine to Chiron. They are just like, hey, we're buddies. So this can be very conducive if one stops, looks, waits, and listens to their heart, to other people. I guess that's my takeaway, isn't it? I keep driving it home. Well, yes, the moon, there it is, the ever-changing moon, because the moon is a process. what is today is not tomorrow. Every 2 hours, it changes in one day, 13 degrees. And by that, it translates light from one planet to the next, and is one thought in Hellenistic. I think it's Hellenistic. But the point is, it goes through these phases, and it is our personal homegrown planet right here that is everything about our how we personalize things, how we can understand them, and the process involved. There, just to bring attention, usually at the halftime, but coming up will be Astrojam next week, and then after that, the lunar eclipse, which will be a buddy system to the one that Amanda and I did on the 2nd for the Leo. And then earlier, Marie O'Neill and I talked about the whole lunar shift. And earlier than that, Rick Levine and I did one about what has been called the Barbeau basket, and I call it burst, which in a sense it is, because that was just a moment. But yet this energy, whether one planet or another comes in, is this dynamic that is ongoing and flowing. So let's go on. The transpersonal, these three are really marching through every aspect. And the interesting thing is, let's look at the breakaway planet, Uranus in Gemini. That's the duality I'll get more involved with. Pluto of Aquarius is really pouring the ambrosia of life itself, that water bear. It's not water, it's spirit. It's the spirit of divinity, of our cosmic fire inside into us, of our spirit. And Neptune is pioneering along with Saturn into a new consciousness of identity, that we are just on the bare tips of a 6,400 year cycle, although it will be 35 years. So again, from mortal standpoints, just know that we're in this huge transition period, and we're in fire and water. Fire and water are so dynamic. The heat of fire steams the water. Water can put the fire out potentially, and it can make the water boil. Fire makes the water boil, and it makes steam engine, or else clouds bringing the rain from salt down to water. It replenishes. It's a very dynamic part. But I wanted to go into some of the mythology, because if we're looking at that chart of the 22nd, and we're realizing that Pluto wasn't Pluto. Where was it? Let me go back for a moment. Can I get back easily? I hope. Rats boo hiss. Oh, there it was. Yeah, this one right here. Okay, with Hermes. Well, yeah, it's in Gemini there, but more than that, Mercury is conjunct the sun. All right, let's go back. The fact is, it's part of this whole duality, along with it's intertwined here somehow. Okay, we can do it. There we go. All right. The caduceus, which Hermes holds, is a very magically marvelous one symbol. It's alchemy. It's the fire coming up the rod into the wings of our hearts and our thoughts, going out, and the spine and the fire of the body, of the soul. And it's these two snakes that come through. It's Egypt is prior to, with snakes that looked at two heads, and at the top was a pine cone, which is also, believe it or not, the Pope has a staff, and the pine cones on top of that came out of pagan times. Thank you. And pine trees are everywhere. They're down in Mesoamerica. People would hold the pine cone and the evergreen. In Mesopotamia, they would hold the pine cone because it was ever giving life. Or here in Egypt, it was the pine cone on top of Osiris's rod, or the blue lotus. They had a blue lotus. But the trade routes went so that, of course, Egypt, which is much older, went into Greece, and Egypt had all the paper, papyrus. So all the saints, well, I don't know about saints, but the priests, the playwrights, the intellects that Greece is so known of, the golden age of Greece, they needed the paper, the papyrus. And so on it, people would travel there, but the ideas flowed. And so these two snakes wind around. But for Greece, it was a fennel. Because ideas are adopted and they're changed. Just even traditions in a family. Everybody has their traditions that they have particular to them. So, but these two snakes, the heads look at them so that it's the polarity of opposing forces. And it could be solar, lunar, masculine, feminine, action, reflection. And it's that equilibrium that in a Libran sense would be perfect, balanced, but it's never balanced. But still it's that pH, like you could look at it like that as far as science, where you get just enough, or maybe just enough clouds to have them look one way, or just enough, whatever the balance is, it works. But here, Prometheus actually smuggled, as I said, that fire into a fennel rod, which I never knew. And it is the divinity. It's a way of speaking of the language that comes down to us, brought to earth. So I'm going to suggest these ways that you can shift, because there's many ways. We know that with the Caduceus and Hermes of the twins, there's this always between the spirit and the matter. One twin was mortal, one wasn't. The sense of duality happens again and again. With Libra, it's always looking at two sides, for instance. Ruler of Venus, ruler of Taurus too. But here, I was in a class with Linda Berry, which I do, and we did a meditation, which I have done for at least 10 years or longer, of Ho'oponopono. And it's Hawaiian, it's ancient. Dr. Ahalea Kala Hulen, I'm hoping I'm saying his name correctly, who passed in 2022, was a psychologist at the university in Hawaii and brought over to the psych ward in the 80s, 83 to 87, because it was a very violent group of people, about 10 people in there. And the wardens would walk with their backs on the wall. They were so scared of what might happen. Anyway, they needed somebody, and he came and he agreed if he could do it according to his way with no interruptions. And he never talked to the inmates, but he would look at every single file and he would say this mantra. Now, it's a longer one in Hawaiian, the original one, but it was with the idea that the power is within. This is where we can change. And if we clear ourselves and we realize that we're interconnected with everybody, this is the gift of Pisces too, holding two things at once, remember? And that we are unified. And the idea of us manifesting in order to clear ourselves, that somewhere in history, we're all cousins, you could say, in a sense. And that by working on this idea that somehow us or our ancestors were responsible for whatever ails anything, we can clear ourselves. I personally, and others that use this, find it works. It's, I love you. I'm sorry. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Not, I'm sorry about you, but please forgive me. Thank you. It's difficult to say this if one's emotionally really bonded and upset. However, if you can get past and just say it, amazingly, it transpires easier. And that energy, without knowing it, you have cleared yourself somehow in this matrix of our unified consciousness. And it is easier, that circumstance. Yeah, we're in a transition period. It's a new awareness. Going back to Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 degrees Aries, February 22nd. It was a 6,400 almost cycle since the last time at 0 degrees Aries. Just beyond our any kind of idea. And I gave a talk in May about it. Many others have. And there's also many, and I say these factors to make you realize that we're grinding a new set. It's like the cast. The cast is in the process of getting dyed. And there'll be many masks, you might say, of happy faces, sad faces, both. But there's moments that help kind of sand it down or reform this, because life is a phase, just like the moon. And we are transporting our ideas all the time between it. And it's not just one. It's really a big kettle of factors. That's why, like with this trine, when you take Neptune, that's between Uranus, that's sudden awakenings at the moment, and Pluto, that's a deep unconscious unearthing, and it's breaking away the boundaries and reestablishing new visions because you've maybe seen new insights. You don't know except where you're going. But if you have heart and you keep your self-worth with Chiron, well, it's going to be 8 years with Chiron. These are not immediate transits. There's many evolutions of it. We'll be able to talk about this time next year when many of these planets go retrograde and they reconnect, because this trine is going to be exact with Uranus and Pluto 5 times altogether. In fact, we have talks ahead. I think it's in November or December, December, where it's anyway. And hindsight, but the moment is now. So if we do think about it and hold this duality of and both, realizing there's interconnection, but yet our identity that we worked hard at with Chiron in Aries to realize that we had an identity that we wanted to latch onto. Now it's a matter of finding that identity and other people's identities have self-worth. And this is where Leo can be so important, to let everybody on the stage, everybody, that's easy. I know easier said for some than others, or in some parts of your life. But the fact is that we all add into this matrix. And when you have, and the action is within. So by taking steps to manifest those dreams that we have that go back to the potentials of, because Jupiter in Leo is all about potentials, like it's bigger and better and it's grander in some ways. The worst is worse and the best is better. And life has that exuberance. Life loves to have extremes, yet extremes are, well, that's part of life too. The zing and the zang, right? But there is a balance between all of this, but it's through the experience. And with the eclipses, if we, on the 22nd, prepare and realize that with Venus opposing Saturn, it's really an opportunity to say, how is this value that I've been attached to? How is it working in my life? And what's the purpose of it? I mean, is it because I don't have self-worth and I really need and demand that somebody's giving me that attention, and I'm going to keep seeking until I find it, or doing something ridiculous to get that attention? When it's already yours by birthright, for the fact that you're born into this world, and by giving it to others and giving it to yourself, by forgiving, by asking, please forgive me, I love you, thank you, I'm sorry, in whatever fashion, ho'opono if you wish, or any other energy work, because we are going into a matter where the line is intuition, if nothing else. I know when you're talking mainstream, people go, I'm not sure about that. And others that are working with it for a long time say, yes, of course. And sometimes it's really a matter of how do we talk about it? And Uranus and Gemini, that is a gift. There's many ways to talk about things. And in fact, going back to last time it was during the war, it was decoded. Those people, nations that had languages such as the Hopi Indians, I think it was, the different, or Hawaiian natives, I'm getting a little mixed up here, but I know that in native groups of people had languages that were so off the charts by mainstream that they could use these and help code. So it's a way of associating different things, but it also means that there are new languages. There's a new way of talking. There's a new way of thinking. There's a new way of jumbling things. Just like now we say for queer society, queer and both, she, them, he, they, and it's transporting, breaking down some of the rigidities that we had that were imposed by one way of defining things. And why? Maybe not because of the judgment, but merely to try to categorize and form it in some kind of a system. I mean, remember this Pisces lunar eclipse is going to have the sun will be in Virgo. The nodes won't be, but the sun will be. So it's a little tipsy back into the last nodal cycle is what I'm saying. And so therefore it is a matter of realizing that how we categorize things in order to understand them or use them can get changed. And that's what's happening. Not only can they, but they will. So we may as well get on board and join the program. And I wish everybody the best success, because enlightenment is a matter of harmony in some ways, but it's also a matter of action. And it's a matter of love, and it's a matter of giving, and it's a matter of wait and see, but more than that, just notice, look and notice. And I'm looking at my notes and trying to find out, because there are people in pain. We want to help people. And that's where community with the Aquarian North Node is going to be very helpful. It's going to give us all new roles that by responding to, we are able to find new assets within us, new ways of repurposing, just like energy, who we are and what we are in order to give it. And such was this talk to you, because as you know, for 8 years, I usually have a guest, and sometimes with a lot of changes, it's not so necessary. And then again, there's things I want to talk about. And it's a matter of me stepping up to my own plate going, okay, I can do this. I can harness these ideas enough to translate them. And I hope that somehow your takeaway is enough to believe in yourself, believe in others, and feel that you have that self-worth that we're all working on stronger and helping each other with, and love that Grand Trine and that kite. And it's pushing us to new directions of new groups and people. Yep. Jupiter in Leo has a lot of wisdom. Jupiter has a lot of wisdom. If we can just take that beliefs without getting so stuck on our own Leo, like I finally created it. Look at my beautiful flower arrangement. As the flowers start to wilt, it's like, well, maybe draw a picture of it or something like that, or just put it in the ground and let it compost. There's ways to find that duality and that purpose and everything else. So the stars are ours. We're part of it. As we come down, they come into us. I guess we go back through them too. A Milky Way. So thank you very much for listening to Talk Cosmos and myself, ROSE MINAHAN, and enjoy your eclipses as we enter this season. We can remember there is a part for us in a community, in our hearts, with others. We just need to find those values and hold on to them and share our peace, share our love. Thank you. We'll see you next week with Astro Jam. It's going to be about the eclipses. It'll be very exciting. 8 people. Hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you for joining this vibrant conversation on Talk Cosmos. Every week, ROSE MINAHAN and her guests explore life's deeper meanings through astrology's energetic patterns. If you loved today's episode, hit like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. And join us next week, same time, same place, as we continue